Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to come after Winnie. This is my friend and my sister. But I wanted to ask the band, the guys who play, so the keyboardist and the drummist, the sound guys, I don't need them here, I'll be doing this alone. The keyboardist, the drummist to come here next to me, because at the end we will do a thing. Let me stand on the protocols already established. And let me thank the Center for Multi-Party Democracy for thinking about the intellectual side of the great Raila Amolo Odinga. But before I even tell the story of Raila in a short while, I want to especially recognize three people in the room. First, allow me to recognize you, Suba Churchill. I do so because in my younger self and as a student leader when I was a young man, saw ourselves in you and hoped we would continue the flame of student leadership that you left behind. And I can tell you, you may not know it, it impacted greatly on us. Secondly, let me recognize Houghton Irungu. As a student leader, while attending what was known as European Development Days, I went to give a speech, and while speaking there as the chair of SONU, Houghton looked at me, called me on the side and said, "David, I think with a bit of mentorship, you're going to be a fine gentleman. I hope I didn't let you down." And he gave me my first job at Oxfam as a governance associate. I later left it and said I couldn't do 8 to 5 and recommended somebody else, and thank you. Thirdly, let me recognize Winnie Kazi Odinga. I call her Kazi because she's not only my sister, she's my friend. One afternoon, seated in my office at Crestwood Marketing and Communications, where we do PR, we had been on phone chatting, and I said, "Pass by," and she came to visit me at Crestwood with her two beautiful nieces, then very young. And while there, she said, "David, I think I feel you can add value to the conversations of governance and leadership in the country. I need your CV." And I tried to say, "Okay, I'll send it." She said, "No, that's not how I work. I need it now." It is Winnie who would go and convince Mzee to have me appointed as Chief Administrative Secretary for the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So she was my appointing authority. And also, Odworongwen, the legendary, who was my boss and colleague. And I don't want to talk about Professor Larry Gumbe because he's my uncle. I would look like I'm doing it because he's my mother's cousin. But on to Raila Odinga. For young people in my time, we grew up looking at this larger-than-life figure. But it was until I was elected the president or chair of SONU, Student Organization of Nairobi University, that I encountered Baba. My first encounter with him was very interesting. I'd been on radio station, and we were at the time, at the very height of campaigning for our constitution. So I was chairman of SONU in 2009. Then this old man called Mzee Odoteko GM in parts of Nyanza had me on radio, rallying fellow young people, talking passionately. And he instructed Honorable Peter Odoyo, former MP for Nyakach and former Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, to fetch me and take me to Raila Odinga. And from that time on, I saw a man who was as passionate about mentorship as can get, multidimensionally. Raila Odinga mentored young people by leading from the front. He created footmarks and footprints for us to all see and place our little feet in them. Not so they may fit, but much more so that we could see the pathway towards a better transformed nation. Raila Odinga led and mentored by the side. He often would urge us on. He would give opportunities to young people. He would help you execute things he expected of you, because he intended that your being around him was going to be impactful. Raila Odinga mentored by leading from the back, which is coaching. I've shown you the way. I've stood by you and shown you how it's done. He would then now let you get into the deep waters and do it on your own. And we are products of that multi-dimensional mentorship. There isn't any point in our history, as we all know in this room, because this is a room full of the men and women who have transformed this country meaningfully and sacrificially. There isn't a single turning point of our nation that does not have the inscription of the name Raila Amolo Odinga. Whether you want to talk about the clamor for multi-party democracy, as you all know, or whether you want to talk about the birth of the idea of devolution, or whether you want to speak about expanding our democratic space, or even if you choose to go down and see the formation of our constitution, Raila Amolo Odinga, a great and true human rights defender. Sometimes the decisions that are not very popular that he may have made, I opine, were predicated on that very principle, that he wanted a nation where we had rights for our people, up to and including when he sided with President William Ruto on Gen Z. Qualms, I'll be done in 4 minutes. So people say, how could he? I say Raila foresaw the possibility of a ruined nation and knew that all these rights we speak about, to education, to free water, to life, to all these things, essentially lose meaning when we do not have a nation within which we can practice these things we so desire. I hold it. I know, and I say it on TV. If there was a man who was ever so libeled in this country, against whom the worst things were said by media and other people, it was Raila Odinga. But maybe you will correct me. Not a single time did Raila Odinga take to court any journalist for saying things that were not true. I say this because while in university, I remember at the very first stages of meeting him, I took one of my fellow university student leaders, a lady from the mountain. I said, because she really believed Raila was this bad human being. She said, David, you know, in my community, we are actually taught that Raila is an ogre. So that if you are not eating your food as a child, you are told, Kula, I'm gonna eat Raila, Kula, I'm gonna eat Raila sai. And so they indoctrinated a whole region in hating a great man. But as Professor, one of the funny comedians in the Rift Valley would say when we lost Baba, he questioned, are you sure huyu mzee hatujakuwa tukimuibia kura?